Yay.
This episode, we have a special guest, someone I've known for a while, joining us, and Amanda Quintana. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on.
Yeah, normally we talk face to face because we've seen each other and we've crossed paths a couple times. So now we're kind of doing this virtually, which is not our norm. But we're going to talk about a little bit about what you do, the Gift Responsibly campaign that's going on. Before we do, can you give the audience a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited. I've been working in the responsible and problem gambling space for about 7 years, but in general, working in like the human services and addiction support service field for almost 10. So it's been really great just to kind of bring a variety of experience to my current position. I currently work for the Colorado Lottery as the player health manager. I've been in this role for about 2 years. So I oversee the responsible gambling program, really work to embed and integrate RG throughout our lottery. So that's been really exciting. And prior to joining the lottery, I was with the National Council on Problem Gambling, where I oversaw responsible gambling programming, and then just helped to really lend my expertise as it relates to problem gambling services. And before that, I was with the New York Council on Problem Gambling, so have a lot of nonprofit experience. And it's my first time working for an operator and kind of on the other side, but it's been really exciting to be able to bring that experience into this role and help to inform the work that we're doing. I also sit on the NCPG board of directors. I was elected this year, so it's been really exciting to, I say exciting a lot. I'm a very excitable person.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been really great though, just to kind of get that perspective and see how we can, um, really bring operators into the space of, reducing and minimizing gambling harm however we can. And it's just been great to be able to kind of build some bridges where there were bridges existing, but I think with the variety of background that I have and just some of the knowledge I've picked up over the years, it's been great to kind of share different perspectives in different rooms and bring people together in that way.
And I think one of the things that always stands out to you when you enter a room, you've got that energy, you've got a lot of passion. But one thing I've noticed, you always try to raise everyone up around you. You know, you sit in when I see you in conferences, you're in breakouts, you listen to people, you share their stuff, you really bring an energy that just tries to lift everyone up for an area that I always talk about gambling that just does not get the attention that everything else does. And that can be exhausting. I'm sure there's times where it's like, are people hearing me? But I do want to take the time to recognize that the work you do, the energy you bring is definitely impactful. So having you on the show to talk about this is also really incredible.
Oh, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. I always joke that I was a cheerleader when I was young, and I've never really let that energy go. And it's like, how can we, in the spirit of collaboration, how can we all come together? And I think there's just truthfully so many amazing people in our field. And for a field that's so small, we're so lucky to have such passionate people. And I think I have just as an individual, I have lived experience as an affected other, and knowing what addiction looks like as a family member, both with problem gambling and substance use disorder, it's just so much, and it can be so much for an individual that's impacted by that. And I think that definitely fuels me because it's like we have such amazing people in our field doing such amazing work, having, micro to macro level impacts. And to me, that's a big thing to celebrate. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's so important in the area of gambling because it's also different. And because I always talk about people when I attend the national conference, it's the National Gambling Addiction and Responsible Gambling Conference, and people are like, "Well, who's all there?" And I talk about it, and people are a little bit surprised to find out who's all there, the type of people that go, and the lotteries there. There's professionals, there's health organization, like there's such a unique set of breaking down silos to have people that need to be in the room in the rooms. And sometimes conversations are not the easiest, sometimes they're challenging, but the willingness to have everyone in the same area, I think is really important. And you've had experience with the nonprofit side, you've had experience now like with the lottery, so you bring a lot of experience of being around plenty of people involved, stakeholders into this profession.
Yeah, in my early career, I used to work as a coalition capacity builder. And so I would work with community coalitions. And that was one thing that was super surprising to me when I first started, but then it made so much sense. There may be when I was doing coalitions, it was around preventing substance misuse amongst youth. Give it 10 years and you still won't be able to say that 10 times fast without messing it up. But everybody is impacted. And, I have a master's from Johns Hopkins, and kind of bringing that public health lens is so important to me because, to your point, I think sometimes we think about a certain issue and we're like, okay, what silos are involved in that? But that's not how it works in reality, right? There's no actual line drawn in the sand and say, okay, these problems stay within this box and these issues stay within this box. Everyone's impacted, and I think especially with, problem gambling and gambling disorder, what is often referred to as a hidden addiction, which is no surprise to you, right? The more that we can shine a light on what this looks like, what is gambling, right? I mean, even working for a lottery, there are times when in Colorado I'm going to, community events and talking about responsible gambling and, attending problem gambling events to raise awareness. And someone approached me recently and was like, the biggest question, the most received question I got after the event was, why is the lottery here? Because even just defining what is gambling, right? A lot of our communities don't consider lottery to be gambling, but I am a big nerd in my truth. And the definition of gambling, to break it down, is risking something of value on a game of chance seeking a reward. It's a lottery ticket. Put some money down, you get a ticket back, you scratch it, and you hope to win. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But even just having a widespread understanding of what gambling is, we haven't even reached that level, right? And so I think it's so amazing that we have so many people from our immediate field, but also those tertiary fields who are just recognizing how everything is so connected. And I think together we're better, So I
Yeah.
don't know. I won't throw too many phrases at you, but teamwork does make the dream work from my
Yeah.
perspective.
And part of it is we're going to talk about a lot more today, which is the Gift Responsibly campaign, which is one of those things that brings awareness to youth gambling, which is always important because I hear a lot about youth don't gamble, they can't gamble. So I was fortunate to have Julia Brunson from the NCPG on and talk about the campaign. But for anyone who didn't listen to it, go back, listen to it, or listen to it the first time. But for anyone who hasn't, can you give a breakdown just real quickly on what the Gift Responsibly campaign is? Because then we're going to talk about with being at the lottery, what that means more particularly than to maybe other places or organizations that get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I have the date right, but it was in the early 2000s. I think it was started by McGill University, and the intention was, there's just such of a risk around youth gambling, and there's a really common social norm around the holidays to give lottery tickets to kids. I think lottery tickets can be super simple, easy, low effort gifts when you need a last minute something, right? And so I think oftentimes it's very normalized in our society and our communities to gift tickets to kids. And so in the early days, the intention of the campaign was simply to raise awareness around the risks that are associated with that. And since the early 2000s, whenever it started, it has since exploded. What once was, something that a few lotteries would participate in and maybe some community organizations would share messages around. Now, every lottery in North America, I believe, signs up every year. It's part of our, planning process. It's super normalized whenever you go to lottery conferences to hear about different lotteries' plans for gift responsibly and having it incorporated into their RG campaigns. But the intention is really to raise that awareness that though lottery tickets can be great gifts, they're not for kids, because there is risk associated with underage gambling. And so it's really connecting those dots of, you know, as many organizations are, and the lottery is obviously pro gambling because you sell gambling, but a lot of community organizations are neutral to gambling. So it's not to say you shouldn't or you should, but it's just to say if you choose to do this thing, please do it responsibly. And more specifically, around the holidays, please don't give lottery tickets to kids for these reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's an important thing to have talk about it because I think you even mentioned it. You were at this community event and someone was like, "Why is the lottery here?" I think the same question would come up as well. Why would the lottery be involved in the Gift Responsibly campaign? Like, I think people struggle or wrestle with that idea, like that there's something there that is not making sense. I've got this like Columbo style with me, like, wait a minute, the lottery, they sell tickets and then they're part of this gift just like so how do you talk to people about why the lottery is really important to be a part of that when some people might think that that doesn't make sense to me?
Yeah, well, we usually start out with because we care, right? The lottery, you know, is a state agency. So as a state agency, we really care about our state and our residents and our communities. I think not only our lottery, but I think many operators recognize that we have an ethical obligation to our communities. If we're selling this product that we know has inherent risk to it, we have an ethical obligation to really work to minimize the harm that can be associated by that. And there's always room for more research. So shout out to the researchers that are doing the work now that we need to really have the support and the data to drive our efforts. But as it exists, there's so much data out there just showcasing that underage gambling can really increase risks for underage people to experience gambling harm. And so as lotteries who have a commitment to our state, to our communities, we start out by saying because we care and we want to make sure that what we're doing it in an ethical and safe way. That, of course, we want individuals to use our products if they're enjoying that. But if we know that there's a way that we can minimize risk, we want to do that. And we recognize that. I was, in preparation for today's podcast, I was just kind of reviewing statistics. And I was even being in the field, having all the experiences. It's always fun to still be surprised by things, but this one wasn't an exciting thing to be surprised by. It was just surprising. But I was looking at youth gambling rates according to NCPG because they do put out the stat sheet. And it was saying that globally, it's estimated about 18% of those under 18 have gambled in the last year. But looking at North America specifically, it shoots up to like 34%. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that there's a lot of risk that those 34% of kids are experiencing. And if we can do something by sharing information on our website and our social media and having conversations with players that can work to reduce that harm, that's something that we're going to do.
And I think that's why I like the Gift Responsibly campaign and some places like the lottery doing it because when I talk with people about gambling, and when I'm working with someone who's got problems with gambling or they might be diagnosed with gambling disorder, you know, they usually have a very clear remembrance of being introduced to gambling at a really young age. But here's where I say why this is important. It's not that it's just a young age, but they were introduced at a young age by like their parents
Hmm.
or by an adult figure. When I'm working with substance use, there are times where someone's been introduced to substances by parents. I've heard plenty of those stories. But then you also hear a lot of them are like, well, I started when I was in my teens maybe, and I was using with some friends. But with gambling, those early childhood experiences, which are really burned in memory. Like I know when people are talking to me about these, like they can almost see it again because it's such a memorable thing where they weren't just introduced at a young age, but they were introduced by parents or an adult figure at a really young age. That it seemed super innocent, that it was we were playing cards for pennies. I was given a lottery ticket for the holidays. But it was usually such a what seemed perceived as a small innocent, no harm event. But these are the ones that a lot of people who are experiencing problems with gambling or diagnosed with gambling disorder can really relate to as their earliest remembrance of gambling. So now when you have like the lottery, this is not just saying we're educating youth about it, but it's also, I think, educating the parents and the adults about why to not gift this, not just on the kids to not get it, but also for the adults, why it may seem harmless or it may seem low cost or it might seem like no cost because the kid's not paying for it. But we're not talking about the cost right now. We're talking about what happens as this develops and down the road. So I'm curious your thoughts on that because I think a lot of it is how to engage with people who are buying the tickets and what they do with the tickets, not like kids are lining up trying to buy lottery tickets.
Exactly. Oh gosh, you hit the nail on the head. And that's one thing. Last year we started a digital pledge because we wanted, you know, it's I'm a big fan of how can we really saturate an environment, right? It's not to say that you're going to change everyone's mind, but what are small shifts that we can make to impact the environment that we're in? Kind of my public health brain, it always pops up. How do we change the space that we're in just to raise this awareness? I think informed decision making is a huge step in making small changes. And so, to your point, you're not having 15-year-olds, I knock on wood, ideally, you're not having, and we're going to make sure we talk to our retailers again, but you're not having 15-year-olds lining up at the grocery store to buy tickets. But what you're seeing are adults going on with their day, buying tickets, and giving some of those to kids. And, I think a lot of, to your points just on like social norming and thinking about how it is just a very normative behavior to say, oh, I got an extra one. Do you want one? Do you want to do this with me? There's just not the information to know and understand what the impact of that can be. And there's a lot of unintended consequences that happen. And I don't have the benefit and joy and blessing of having children right now, but I do know many parents who tell me and assure me that when my time comes, I will not be handed a special book that gives you all the rules and the right things to do and the wrong things to do. And, you know, it's not easy to be an adult in today's society, to say the absolute least. But what we're trying to do is just help people understand, well, in this activity, this is what can happen, and this is why it matters, and this is why it matters we don't do that. And so last year we had a digital pledge where we would talk to parents about the importance of not gifting to kids and asking them to sign this pledge to not give tickets to kids. And, and in those conversations, it kind of started as just like we had a flyer on the table and said, hey, we're talking about our holiday scratch tickets and also just want to raise awareness of this thing. And I wish I had kept a tally of how many parents had told me, whoa, what do you mean? I shouldn't give this to my kid. And I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding that exists in our world, right? Around a lot of things, but specifically to this topic around gifting tickets to kids. And people just don't know. But the first step is starting the conversation and talking about it. And I think, doing the Gifting Responsibly campaign, having messages in your different channels is one way to start that. We wanted to have an add an actionable step, and so we've been kind of playing with the idea just around our responsible gambling messaging, so not as it relates to problem gambling, but incentivizing, interacting with responsible gambling messages and tactics with a lottery swag pack, whether it be like a backpack or a water bottle or, something fun so that people
Yeah.
are interested, but saying, hey, I want to talk to you about something that may not always be the most comfortable conversation, but if you engage in this and we do a little learning together, we'll try and incentivize that and one to you for a random, selection, and we'll award one or two people for their participation. And we've actually seen some cool success. The first step is getting people to stay at the table to talk about it, but once you start talking about it, you kind of see the light bulbs go off.
And I think you highlighted something that we don't talk about enough is that we are talking about youth gambling and we are wanting to talk about keeping that safe and reducing that harm, but also creating a safe space for the parents and the adults because it's not like when we see this, it's this intent to harm or to do like a lot of it, as you said, is this idea of it's harmless or there's no big deal with this. And one of my previous year's podcast episodes around this time was about why is lottery tickets or gambling such a appealing gift. And sometimes it is low cost. It is a way that it kind of engages the person that they have a little bit of fun with it. There's a lot of reasons, and it's not that it's with a lot of ill intent. Like I'm not seeing a lot of parents who are like, yeah, I'm doing this because, but also if we challenge parents like that, like we're gonna have a hard conversation because of what you're doing, that's not gonna help either. Like we're trying to help with the youth gambling, but also it's to create a safe space for the parents and adults to understand this, to acknowledge this, and to not make them feel a whole bunch of shame because that's not gonna help. That's gonna that usually doesn't. create healing. That creates a lot further separation. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big challenge you have as we're at a table talking or where you're at somewhere else is this isn't the easiest thing to bring up with parents and adults. Like
No.
it's got to be a challenging topic to sometimes I'm like it's probably easier to talk about substance use or mental health than it is to bring up a topic like this.
Well, in my previous positions when I was doing nonprofit work specifically around problem gambling, we had table banners and we'd have all these signs and we were super excited to set up our table. And then you take a step back and it's like, we're the problem gambling table. People don't always want to come up to a problem gambling table and be seen in public having this conversation. So I definitely had to sharpen my skills to bring people in and, make them feel welcome. But yeah, I mean, I don't think any of what we're doing is really to promote shame. It's just to help kind of bring people in, right? How do we just raise awareness on what's going on and to your point, I don't think anybody is intentionally knocking on all the lids, right? We're not expecting that anyone's intentionally doing harm, but how can we make a small shift so that way we can, have a small correction in our behavior and just do a little bit, do something a little bit different to ensure that we're taking care of our kids in another way. And I think the more you know, the better you can do things. And so that's kind of our approach to it is how can we just share this information so that way parents are making informed decisions.
So when the lottery decides to sign on to this campaign and commit to this, what can we expect from the lottery to do with it? There's certain things that you have to do. There's certain things you want to add on, you try to throw on. Like when you decide to do this, what is it that we expect to see, at least from where you are, what a lottery organization might be entailed to do at this time during the campaign?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as mentioned, NCPG kind of hosts the Gift Responsibly program. And I think even kind of continuing in that same vein of not shaming anyone, right? They have different levels of participation. And so those different levels have different suggestions or requirements for, the suggested participation. What we're planning to do this year is, we'll have information on our social media. We're gonna do like media pitches and see if we can get just general information on gifting responsibly out into the news and articles and things like that online. We have posts on our website. So in addition to the social media campaign, we'll have a news post. We will have that digital pledge on our website. So if anyone is interested, you can always sign up to, pledge not to gift lottery tickets to kids. A fun thing that we're doing this year, which we actually added two elements to our campaign that we hadn't had in the past. The first is having the gift responsibly message at our point of sale. So when you go into a retail location, be it a grocery store or a gas station or what have you, there's screens that have like different lottery messages on them. And this year at the point of sale, we're also including the Gifting Responsibly campaign. So that was an exciting addition. And then we have our specific player health campaign around gifting responsibly. In addition to that, we have an annual holiday scratch campaign. And traditionally, we've kept those messages kind of separate just because they've been in separate buckets and had different kind of, targets. This year, we're really looking to link them. And so at the end of
Hmm.
our holiday scratch campaign commercial, which will be on like TV and YouTube and all those different places, on the end card where it says, whatever the end card says, I can't remember. I probably should have pulled it up, but it also says, great gifts for grown-ups. Alliterations are fun. But again, just having those 1% mini shifts, just having a small message in the environment, just to remind people these are great gifts. And if you want to play and it's something that feels good for you, we'd love, for you to engage with our products. But just having that reminder, this is for grown-ups. And so really kind of carrying through that message that, our products they're age gated and, on all of our commercials and things, we have the 1-800-GAMBLER number and, information for where to access help, but really trying to integrate this campaign really fully into our repertoire. So having information in retail locations sent to retailers, in the media, etc. Just really working to spread it out there far and wide.
And when you commit to the campaign and the different level that you do, there's like these sort of like minimum things that are expected to do. Do you find yourself in your experience over the years that there's always people and places trying to figure out what to do more besides just like, to me, I was reason why I reached out to you, the reason why, I reached out to Julie, I was like, every year as the podcast, I sign up and I'm like, well, I'm gonna post on social media, I'm gonna do a podcast episode, and then this year I was like, well, what am I gonna do different? Am I gonna do another episode on and then I was like, well, let me actually have NCPG talk about it. Let's have someone from the lot. Like, I was trying to think of what else can I do more than just what is kind of like the floor expectation. Have you found, like in your experience, or even like where you work, that there's always this idea of trying to figure out what more to do or what new ideas to do for a campaign such as this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge part of evaluation of the work that you're doing, right? When you do something one year and then you kind of at the end of it, you have a debrief meeting and say, okay, what worked? What didn't work? How can we improve? And I think that is one thing I really enjoy about our field is that there's a lot of information sharing, but there's also a lot of kind of sharing of those specific things, what worked and what didn't work, so that we can learn from each other and see how we can improve. And I'm definitely seeing that not only, internally at the lottery, but just in the field in general is how can we continue to evolve? I think the gambling space in general is constantly evolving. I feel like every day you open your email and there's something new going on. Um, and so I think to stay up to date, to stay in it, but also it's fun to evolve, right? It's exciting to see how we can grow something and if something is working, can you make it better? If something is crushing it, keep it the same, but can you add something else onto that? If something's not working, it's okay if something's not working. How can you adjust it and see if if this new iteration will make it better? And so, yeah, definitely. I think it's really exciting just to see how we can continue to grow because I don't know, I always joke if we stayed the same person we are when we were 21 to who we are now, it'd be a very interesting world to be in. But the process of growing, though it can sometimes be a little clunky, it's fun. Like that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple people, places, and the thing that I've really enjoyed lately is it seems like there's just not just certain people trying to push the campaign of Gift Responsibly, but people just wanting to get more involved, more places wanting to get more involved, more places seeing that like, hey, we want to do something like this too. And it's not only for one place or one institution, but also we're trying to even expand it beyond just the seasons. Like this is gift giving is all year. There's no shortage of when to find or why to find a gift for someone. But also, I think that's just because we're now seeing more people wanting that. It's not just the voices that have been trying to speak loud and be overcrowded with everything else that gets the attention. But I think we are seeing a shift with people now wanting more for gambling, more of the resources, more of the involvement. And I can't say that's always been there.
No, no, it has not always been there, but that's the beauty of growth, right? I think, responsible gambling, I've talked to a lot of people. I mean, I could talk responsible gambling in my sleep if you allowed me, but I've talked to a lot of people who have been in the field for a long time and it's changed drastically. I mean, it's almost 2026. Let's even just say the last 10 years. It has changed drastically. The attention to the field, the passion in the field, the drive for innovation. I think at one point in time, and it's no fault of anyone. I think it's just you do what you can with what you have. And once you learn more, you can do better. And at one point, responsible gambling was a series of checkboxes. Do I have a hotline on my tickets? Do I have somewhere on my website where someone can click a link to get somewhere?
Yeah, a minimum
Um,
floor, a kind
we
of
have a
down here.
minimum floor. And then as you continue to grow and you recognize, now responsible gambling. has changed so much. I mean, even my position, my title isn't, there are some operators who have like a responsible gambling manager or a director of whatever. I'm the player health manager because it's not just about responsible gambling, which at one point was pretty much synonymous with problem gambling. Now it's like, no, we're looking at the full spectrum of player health and we're looking at, people who maybe have never gambled in their life. How do we want to communicate to them? We're looking at people who maybe do gamble and they can gamble in a way that feels healthy and sustainable to them. And how do we communicate to them? We're looking at people who experience gambling harm. And that in and of itself has subpopulations. Right? You have people who experience gambling harm, but may never is not a word I'll say here, but may not be ready to acknowledge how that gambling harm is impacting them. You have people who recognize they have gambling harm and they're working to access treatment. You have people in recovery. Like there are just so many subpopulations in, the spectrum of the world that you want to make sure that when you're thinking about your responsible gambling program, when you're thinking about player health, it's all encompassing. And that's really what we've been trying to do here. And I think it's been really exciting to be able to kind of bring some of that change, not just to our lottery, but also share that with the industry, right? Like player health is not, I'll just say it out loud. I think that at one point, responsible gambling and player health was seen as something that could be detrimental to a business. And now it's seen as a strength. Now it's seen as something that's going to lend a hand to really supporting our players, to leaning to business sustainability, to leaning to ethical and responsible growth, right? And I think even just that shift has changed drastically how we're able to really employ responsible gambling tactics and tools, how we're able to talk about player health with players, with parents, with people who are like, why are you talking to me about gambling harm? And it's like, well, because we don't want you to experience gambling harm. We want you to feel happy and healthy and safe. And if that means you want to use our products or you don't want to use our products, we recognize that either way is a great avenue for you to go on, and we want you to, go down the one that feels best for you. But it's the field has changed a lot, and it's been really exciting to be a part of that change.
Yeah, I like the idea of looking at it from a, because I think part of the challenge has been, and this is once again, I like our conversations going to like this safe space of it's not that I am mad at places because they've ignored gambling, because like it is hard to look at triaging, you know, substance use with what we saw with opioids or mental health. And I always tell audiences when I'm doing presentations and when I'm talking that I'm not asking one to like give up everything you're doing and now come over to the gambling side because we need you to do what you do. But what we need, what I often emphasize, is people to just become more gambling informed.
Hmm.
And that means asking about it, having resources. Because one of the things that comes up a lot is I like to randomly do like screening surveys among not just people that I treat, but also I work in treatment programs where there's hundreds of patients seeking care. So now I can do like surveys and screenings for like a large amount. And what's fascinating is I don't get these large amounts of people that are identifying with a problem with gambling. However, what always stands out to me is I always put in there, are you ever concerned about someone else's gambling? I always throw that in there. And what's amazing is the number of are you concerned about someone's gambling is always higher than someone identifying that they are having a problem with gambling. So to me, it's also just about that gambling it's a big thing. It's around. It's even though if you call it gambling, some people react differently from it. It's a very fascinating social experiment that I love doing when I go to places. It's just how I am. Someone's doing a 50-50 raffle and you say, "Oh, I'll gamble," and they're like, "No, it's not gambling." All right, I guess for some reason we can't call it what it is, but it's hard to deny that gambling is just a part of culture. It's a part of what's around us, and that there's going to be people along the whole spectrum impacted in a variety of ways. It's not just everyone's here or everyone's there. And I think gift giving is sort of like that level of intervention to be able to talk to a lot of people about gambling. That maybe if you brought up, oh, you got a big problem with gambling or you've got a gambling, like, no, we're not, we're talking to just anyone that might be thinking of giving this as a gift, even if there is no issue or no problem, but this is our chance to educate, talk about it a way that we might not normally get to. So I like how this kind of expands to just about gambling in general, because it is hard to talk about it and bring up with everything else going on.
Yeah, I mean it certainly can be, and I think, during the holidays, because it's such of a, to your point, this is a time of gift giving. It's a nice in to be able to start the conversation, but it's not the end all be all to the conversation. And one thing I talk a lot about internally is, when you look at different gambling types and how people engage with gambling types, to your point, there's a lot of different gambling types, and oftentimes we're not even aware of all the ones that exist. Um, but time after time, research article after research article, when you look at the different verticals, so to speak, the most people, when you think about like, have you gambled in the last year? Most people will say yes to lottery first. They may also engage in sports betting. They may also go to casino. They may play bingo, right? So there may be other things, but the most people who gamble, that number one slot has consistently been lottery play. And so it's always interesting when people are like, well, why are the lottery, why is the lottery talking about this? Like, and it's not to say people can't experience gambling harm as it relates to gambling. That certainly, I'm sorry, as it relates to lottery, that certainly does happen. But it's
Hmm.
not usually the one that's most commonly thought of or talked about. But it's important for lotteries to talk about player health, talk about responsible and problem gambling, because we have the widest audience, right? We're talking to the most amount of people. We have the most amount of eyes that we can really work to spread this prevention message or this harm reduction message on how do we really help to provide tips and tools. If you're choosing to engage in these products, how can we do that in a way that feels sustainable, healthy, and happy for you? And if it doesn't, here are some resources that can be helpful. If you're looking for harm reduction, here are some things you can do. If you're looking to just kind of check in on your play, here are some things you can do. If you want to stop your play, here are some resources for you. So, yeah, it's a really interesting time, and I think I'm a big fan of jumping on, whenever you have an opportunity, grab it. Like if
Yeah.
you can talk about something, if you can really work to raise awareness around something, even if it's, to one person, to 100 people, to however many people, you're planting seeds, and that's just helpful.
That's why I tell people I like I say I like sports, but I'm just not like fully into, I'm not the person that's like I gotta watch every game or like if there's a chance to be outside instead of inside watching my like I'd rather be outside doing something. So I always say like I like my teams. I'm a big fan of my teams, but also it's why I actually like when the Super Bowl comes around because people talk more about football or gambling
Hmm.
around it. So like people are asking like, "Oh, what are you doing for it? Are you doing anything for the game?" And it just gets people having more conversation. So the fact that I love when that comes around because then I get to find out more like, well, what are you doing for the game? Are you doing anything special? And um, people might talk more about gambling around it. So to me, like when these big things come up, I like these opportunities to then have those discussions, which normally wouldn't, they're a lot harder to have in like typical routine conversation. So I agree. It's times where I like it to be able to then talk about it when people are more open to it or they're not as caught off guard when you ask them. So I've got a question because you mentioned the importance of it's not just doing the campaign. It's not just about following through with what you say you're going to do, but also you mentioned afterwards to kind of evaluate and look at things. So from your experience, like how do you look at was this a success or how do you look at did we do what we wanted to do? Did we achieve what we want? Like how do you go through that process of we committed to this, this is what we the this is what we committed to do. This is what we did. Maybe we did some extra things. Maybe we went a little bit more than we said. By the end of this, this is what we saw. How do you evaluate then where all that is and then to use that to maybe next year? But can you walk us through a little bit about what that process looks like?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think for starters, right, it's kind of going through and saying, okay, we committed to do these 10 things or whatever it is. were we able to commit to them? Did we, were we able to complete those 10 items and kind of seeing if we were great, how did that go? How, for example, for a social media campaign, how did the public react, right? Were there any comments? Did people message us and say anything about this campaign? Um, Also talking with our staff. I think, my technical team, I'm a team of one, right? There's one in the player health department, but I'm on a team of 100 people, right? And we have player facing staff, we have behind the scenes staff, we have operations staff, we have all these different people that just have such different perspectives. So also talking to them and saying, hey, what did you think about that, right? Did you get any feedback from players? Did you hear this in your personal life? Did you see our campaign while you're watching, your nighttime television? Like just really talking to people and getting, in addition to the, what is that called? Oh gosh, where there's like numbers metrics and then there's conversational metrics.
Mm.
What is the word I'm looking for? Oh gosh, well, whatever it is. Sorry for that little brain blip there, but looking at both sides of the coin and making sure that we're not only looking to see, what is the data coming back on our impressions and our reach for our digital campaigns and were we able to check off all of the boxes we were hoping to check off. But what was the response? How did people feel when we were talking with players? What did they say? For example, last year, in addition to the pledge, a digital pledge, we rolled it out on a kind of holiday tour thing where we were talking about holiday scratch games. And so we had promotions around holiday scratch games and we tagged on the digital pledge. And we were able to look at this tour that we did and say, okay, there were some things that worked. It was really great to talk to people. There were a lot of people that had no idea about, the risks of underage gambling that we were able to raise awareness of. But it was too many words, right? Our pitch was too long, it was too wordy, it was confusing at times. So then you kind of workshop. Well, okay, how can we make this shorter? How can we make sure that our communication is more direct? How do we make sure that um, the flyers that we have and the QR codes, like make sure that that's working. So it's really looking at not just, what is our reach and our numbers and are we checking all the boxes, but more specifically, how does it make people feel? How does it make our team feel? Are there ways that we can really work to make this a really inviting and approachable in tone and execution campaign that will be more successful? Because it's one thing to put up a social media post that three people see, and it's an entirely different thing to say, okay, only three people saw this. Do we try a video next year? Do we, I don't know, do we post it on a different time? Or there's a gazillion questions that you certainly can ask when it comes to evaluation, but it's just thinking about it from all angles and saying, how can we, and it's not saying this has to be perfect next year, but what are small changes we can make to see if we have an impact in the direction we want to go?
I think that's what's going to grow too is not just signing up to check a box to say we did this, but also wanting to know that what was done or what we tried had some impact, or we can start to look at like what did it do and being able to take that feedback in to hear from people like how was it? Like did you see it? Did you notice it? Like I'm always walking around in Wisconsin, so I'm always when I travel places and go places, I'm always looking at like, well, what's going on with the Wisconsin lottery? What do they have over here? What's going on over there? So I think it's just really important to not think it's done because we made the post or even me. Okay, I did the recording of the podcast. I posted it. I guess I'm done, but like what more to do to look at how the impact it's having. And when people have that desire, it's just going to continue to carry the campaign and its impact further and further. So this brings me to my last question for you before we wrap up, and I'm excited to ask this. I didn't think I was gonna, no idea that this was gonna come up because this is how these conversations go. But knowing you, knowing the energy you bring, I would say like what would be your call to action to anyone that's listening that you would ask them to do that would really continue to drive us in this direction of progress and success and moving forward in the area of gambling when it comes to, the Gift Responsibly campaign and other campaigns. But what would your call to action be for people to really sort of keep carrying us forward in that direction. I think it's one of the best things that you bring that energy. So what would you say to people about that to help us continue with this momentum that we're actually building after so many years of not having it?
Ooh, what a fun question. I have so many thoughts. I would say for starters, have a curiosity mindset, right? I think our field is growing and expanding in so many amazing ways, and let's also do the same thing with player health and responsible gambling. And I mean, even when it comes to problem gambling service providers, how can we be curious and how can we be innovative and being open obviously in like safe ways, but being open to trying new things and really leaning on the partners that we have in this space. There are just truthfully so many brilliant people in this space. Some that are at every single conference and some that may you may see for the first time as a first time presenter. But I think that everybody's perspective and their experience it lends them a different view of the space that we're in. That you're really able to pull that into the work that you're doing and use that and leverage that information and knowledge to improve. I think in a lot of ways, responsible gambling is based on good intentions, right? A lot of the tools that operators have, they have pretty, I mean, statistically pretty low usage rates. What are some ways that we can be innovative to get people to use them more? If someone listening is as, actively gambling and you're enjoying it, awesome. Have you looked at tool usage yourself, right? Have you done a self check? And I guess lastly, I would just say, for people in the industry, for regulators, vendors, operators, really anyone that's listening, lean in, right? I think sometimes when it's uncomfortable and it's different and it's a little bit nerve-wracking, you have this urge to lean out and say, someone else is going to do it. It's fine. We're doing some things. It's okay. And if you're doing some things, kudos to you because I'm a big fan of we're going to celebrate the small wins as much as we celebrate the big wins. But also don't be afraid to lean in and try something new or ask a question or talk about something that maybe is like, I don't know if we can do this a little bit better. How can we approach that? So yeah, I mean, I think we're all in this space and it doesn't hurt to ask a question and it doesn't hurt to reach out and a no is not the end all be all. If you get a no, that's okay. Is there a way that you can rework it so it can be a maybe next time or, whatever the case may be? But there's a lot of work for us to do, and our field is expanding, and there's a lot of energy. I mean, I think I have a lot of energy, and I appreciate your acknowledgement of that energy, but there's a lot of us that are really excited about the work that we're doing. So let's all come together and do some cool stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things I've seen in the area of those of us who've been involved in like this gambling realm and everyone that I've interacted with, and whether it's like from lottery side like you, whether it's a treatment provider, whether it's such different capacities, that one thing I see a lot is people are really willing to be humble and acknowledge that I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. Like still trying to figure things out, still trying to learn things. We don't have all the resources that other areas have to really even fully understand what's going on and everything that we know. And a lot of people come into there with like a willingness to acknowledge that and like a desire to want to just keep learning more. Like very few people, there are some out there, but very few people that walk in there, I feel being like, oh, I know all this or I got all this. Things are constantly changing. How things were, like you said, today is different than how it was a couple days ago. And I've always found that to be such a safe space for those who work in it, that like you can walk in there and be like, I don't have all the answers. I don't fully know. That's okay because someone else doesn't know what you know, and they're willing to share that with you. If you're willing to share what you know with it, they don't know. There's, I always say we run in small circles,
Hmm.
and in the gambling profession, that's even I think more true than in other areas. But I always say we cover greater distance together, and it's enjoyable to be in that space where you can put your guard down and say like, yeah, I don't exactly know, but does anyone else deal with this? Or and people share. Like we're not trying to keep
Yes.
like these trade secrets of like, well, I figured it out, so I'm gonna keep
I whisper to
quiet. Like,
myself.
yeah, like it's people just willing to like share and talk, and then this is how things exactly like this get bigger and better. It's how more people want to join and be a part of it. I mean, it's a challenging thing to be a part of, but it's also a really amazing thing to get involved with because of what it all takes and what we're able to accomplish.
Absolutely. And to your point, everyone's had a first day, right? Everyone has been a beginner at one point in their life, if not lots of points in their life. And so, but I agree. I think our field is, in a lot of ways, really open to sharing. And don't get me wrong, you certainly may get some dialogue where you're like, I have a conflicting opinion to that, but it's also okay to say that out loud, right? It's okay to say, from my perspective, from my viewpoint, this is how I see it. And honestly, those disruptors can sometimes be the most helpful because if you're seeing something the same way for however long, and then somebody comes along and says, hey, I mean, you've been doing this and it seems kind of cool, but also have you thought about it this way? You might have just changed the game, right? You may walk into a room for the first time and change someone's entire perspective and help them to improve something that they thought was already, A1 perfect. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the more that we can really work to lean on each other and continue to expand. One other thought. If you're not in the gambling space and somehow you've ended up on this podcast, we want you. Come to the table.
Yeah.
There's a seat for everyone. And if there isn't, we will build you a seat. We'll make a new table. We'll figure it out. But I think the more people that we can get in, the better that will be. Because truthfully, I do think that we are stronger together. I think that those different perspectives, those different viewpoints, that's how we have a more well-rounded n- field, right? It's not just one thing. It's not like as a lottery, I want to make sure the lottery is the best. No, I want to make sure our field is operating in the best way that we can, be it from prevention, treatment, recovery, research, operators, vendors, regulators, etc. Right? Like we all have a seat at the table. Lawmakers, everyone has a seat at the table. Um, and it's just making sure that like we continue to make space for that growth.
Yeah, I think the Gift Responsibly campaign, which also then added the Too Young to Bet, is
Yeah.
also like a show of finding more and more ways for it to be harder for places to get involved. So like it's just allowing growth for more places to say, I can still do this even though I'm not the lottery, I can still be involved. Or even though I'm not specifically doing gambling, I can still get involved as like an org. Like we're just finding more ways to make it harder for people to say, this is not for me, or this isn't something that I can do. And like you said, I think part of that messaging is like we want more and more people at a seat at the table. We've been asking for our seat at the table with gambling helplines and gambling resources. It doesn't mean we're going to be selfish and keep others away. We want everyone to be able to be that. So I think that's a really great message to share with that. So I know you and I can talk for a long time, and you and I will get to talk in the future. That's not ending here. But
Absolutely.
after everything we discussed, everything that we talked about, I know you gave some great call to actions, but any final takeaways, any last thing you want to say in general about what you've done with the Gift Responsibly campaign, the lottery, or just anything in general you'd like to share with the audience as we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, I mean, to the point that was made before, being at the table is really the first step, but um, just keep being curious and seeking out that information. If you're someone that is, engaging in gambling behavior, whether, if it feels good or it doesn't feel good, no matter what, if you're engaging in gambling behavior, it always feels good to do a self-check, kind of check in with yourself and your heart. How does it feel? There's all kinds of tools out there. One that I'm a huge fan of, and we just added to our website is a positive play quiz. It is research backed. It is really awesome, a really awesome way just to kind of check and see how does my play behavior feel for me. If you're a treatment provider and you're just learning about gambling, if you've got gambling screens on, keep doing what you're doing, keep asking the questions. Um, if you are an operator or a vendor or a regulator or anyone that's adjacent to the industry, stay curious and stay stay active, right? Don't let your responsible gambling program just kind of sit in a back corner and collect dust. Open that binder and see what's in there and see if we can kind of tune some things up because that's where the fun happens. And we're a pretty fun crowd. So I think the more people that we've got at the table, the more fun we can have together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Amanda, for joining, talking. It's always great connecting with you, but I also appreciate that you helped me do something different for the campaign this year. You helped me, do something that is what I haven't done before and have, the lottery come on, someone talk about from that perspective and everything, which we've haven't done before. So I want to thank you for that. But as always, what you shared is just insightful, incredible. As if someone can't tell right now, like you are the ultimate cheerleader for a lot of us. You really raise the bar to get more involved and to be a part of it. So I know like that energy is felt whenever in your presence. So I'm very grateful you were able to bring that to the podcast audience.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be able to have been a guest, and this is a first for us also. So we're doing some fun things, but it's exciting just to be able to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll have some links for podcast listeners where they can learn more about it, find more about what you're doing and everything. But thanks again for joining, and everything's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.